It was just another mundane Tuesday evening at home. You know, the kind where you're kicked back in your favorite chair, eyes half glued to the television, half lost in the bliss of the quiet night. Just me, my old worn-out recliner, and a sitcom rerun that's been playing for the umpteenth time. I just polished off a long day at work, trading the hustle and bustle of the office for the comforting hum of the television. The house was quiet, save for the distant hum of the fridge and the occasional creaking of the old wooden floorboards. It was the sort of silence that was almost loud, you know? The kind that makes you aware of your own breathing, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the rustling of your clothes when you shift in your seat. And then, I heard it. A soft, faint knocking sound. It was so quiet, so distant I almost dismissed it as the wind. The trees outside my window were known to tap against the glass during a good gust. So, I brushed it off, turned up the volume on the TV, and sank deeper into my chair. But then, it happened again. The same knocking sound, only this time a bit louder, a bit more insistent. It wasn't the wind, I realized, and a shiver ran down my spine. It was coming from the front door, a slow, rhythmic knock, knock, knock that seemed to echo through the silence of the house. I could feel a knot of unease forming in the pit of my stomach. I was alone, and yet here was this knocking, persistent, steady, almost demanding. I rose from my chair, heart pounding in my chest, and made my way towards the front door. The knocking continued, each thud echoing louder and louder in the quiet house. It was an unwelcome sound, an intrusion into my peaceful evening. It was like an unwelcome guest, demanding entry, refusing to be ignored. The knocking persisted, louder this time, like an unwelcome guest demanding entry. Summoning up courage, I decided to confront whatever it was. Steeling my nerves, I began my slow, tentative journey down the hallway. It's funny, you know, how a familiar space can suddenly feel so foreign. This was the corridor I had walked down 1,000 times, but tonight it felt different. It felt as if it had stretched out into an unending maze, an abyss that was swallowing me whole. Bracing myself for the worst, I turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. The first thing that hit me was the cold. Like a winter breeze, it seeped into my bones, making me shiver. The room was barren, save for an old rocking chair in the corner. The chair, weary and weathered, sat in stark contrast to the bare walls and empty floor. There was nothing else in the room. No furniture, no decorations, not even a speck of dust. Yet the chair was moving. It rocked back and forth, as if someone invisible was seated there, lost in thought. I stood in the doorway, unable to tear my gaze away from the oddly hypnotic movement of the chair. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone. The absence of sound was deafening. No creaking floorboards, no rustling of leaves outside the window, no hum of the city beyond, just the rhythmic creaking of the rocking chair. I could feel my heartbeat quicken, matching the rhythm of the chair's movement. It was like a phantom lullaby, soothing yet eerie. The air in the room was thick with a sense of dread. It clung to me, a cold shroud that made my skin prickle with unease. There was something about this room, something that made the hairs at the back of my neck stand on end. I wanted to leave, to turn around and bolt out of there. But my feet felt rooted to the spot as if the room had cast a spell on me. I was trapped in this chilling tableau, a prisoner of my own curiosity and fear. And then the unthinkable happened. The chair stopped rocking. It stood still, as if frozen in time. The silence that followed was oppressive, like the calm before a storm. The chair creaked, rocking back and forth on its own, adding to the chilling atmosphere. I could feel a presence in the room, an unseen entity sharing the space with me. It was as if a curtain of cold had been drawn around me, a gust of wind that should not exist within the confines of my living room. The flickering lights were the only indication that I wasn't alone, and they danced in the darkness like a warning sign. Suddenly, the world plunged into darkness, the bulbs giving up their fight against the unseen force. The room was swallowed by an eerie silence, broken only by the barely audible whispers that seemed to float around me. They were soft, faint, like a conversation held too far away to comprehend. The whispers grew louder, yet more indiscernible, a language not meant for human ears. They seemed to seep into the very walls, the furniture, the air I breathed. The atmosphere grew heavy, oppressive, as if the room itself was closing in on me. Each breath became a struggle, each gasp a fight for survival. The whispers turned into a cacophony, a barrage of sounds that made no sense, yet held an underlying tone of menace. The room was no longer just a room, it was a battlefield, a territory claimed by a specter unseen. And I I was merely an intruder, a trespasser in my own home. I could feel it, the presence stronger than ever, a force that seemed to thrive in the darkness. It was all around me, engulfing me, a chilling reminder of the unseen world that exists parallel to ours. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, a symphony of the unseen that resonated in the silent room. Fear gripped me, a paralyzing fear that glued me to the spot. The whispers, the presence, the suffocating room. It was a nightmare unfolding in the safety of my home. Each second stretched into eternity, each heartbeat echoed in the silence. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The whispers, the presence, the suffocating atmosphere, all gone. But the echo of the experience lingered, a chilling reminder of the unseen presence. I could hear it whispering, its voice a chilling whisper in the darkness. In a panic, I stumbled back, trying to escape the room and its unseen inhabitant. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest as I scrambled for the doorknob, my hands slick with cold sweat. The whispers that had been faint and distant were now a deafening cacophony in my ears, a symphony of unintelligible murmurs that filled the room with an eerie sense of dread. Somehow, I managed to yank open the door and fling myself into the hallway. The door slammed shut behind me with a resounding bang that echoed down the empty corridor. The whispers stopped abruptly, leaving me in a silence so profound it felt like a physical force. I stood there, panting and shaking, every nerve in my body screaming for me to run. But my legs were like lead, refusing to obey. The hallway was dimly lit, casting long shadows that danced and flickered in the faint glow. It was as if I had stepped into a different world, one where the normal rules no longer applied. The familiar surroundings of my home were now a haunted labyrinth, filled with unseen terrors lurking in the shadows. I could still hear the knocking sound. It was faint, like a distant echo, but unmistakable. It was no longer coming from the hallway, but from inside the room I had just escaped from. The room that was now sealed shut, its doorknob cold and unyielding under my trembling hand. The whispers started up again, a low, insistent hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized that I was not alone. The unseen presence was still with me, its whispers wrapping around me like a shroud. I could feel it watching me, its unseen eyes boring into my back. I knew then that this was not the end of my ordeal, but the beginning of an unfinished tale. As I stood there panting and terrified, the knocking started again, only this time it was coming from the inside.